The late autumn sun painted the city in shades of gold as YN walked into the park, clutching a steaming cup of hot chocolate. Taehyung had texted her to meet him at their usual spot, a quiet bench under a sprawling oak tree. It had been their go-to hangout for years, ever since they met in college. When she arrived, Taehyung was already there, leaning back with his hands tucked into his coat pockets. His fluffy brown hair was tousled by the wind, and he seemed lost in thought. Hey, Tae. YN greeted, her voice light. She plopped down beside him, nudging his shoulder playfully. Hey, he replied, flashing his boxy smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. YN tilted her head, studying him. What's with the gloomy face? You've been off lately. Is something wrong? Taehyung sighed, his gaze fixed on the ground. I'm fine. Just thinking. Before YN could press further, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and smiled. Who's that? Taehyung asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Just Jimin, YN replied, oblivious to the sudden change in his demeanor. We're planning to check out that new restaurant downtown tomorrow. Taehyung stiffened. You and Jimin? Alone? Yeah, why? No reason, he muttered, though his jaw tightened. YN frowned. Tae, seriously, what's going on? You've been weird ever since I told you about Jimin and me hanging out. Taehyung hesitated, running a hand through his hair. He glanced at her, his deep brown eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't quite place. YN, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you like him? His voice was low, almost hesitant. The question caught her off guard. Jimin, I mean, he's nice and funny, but I don't know if it's like that. Why? Taehyung let out a bitter laugh. Of course, he's nice and funny. He's perfect, isn't he? Meanwhile, I'm just me. What are you talking about? YN asked, confused. Taehyung stood up abruptly, pacing in front of her. I can't do this anymore, YN. Watching you with him, hearing you talk about him, it's driving me crazy. Her eyes widened. Tae, what? I like you, YN. He blurted out, his voice trembling. I've liked you for years. And I didn't say anything because I was scared of ruining what we have. But now, seeing you with someone else, it hurts more than I thought it would. The confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. YN stared at him, her mind racing. Taehyung, her best friend, the one constant in her life, he liked her. Tae, she began, standing up. I know, he interrupted, his voice quieter now. I know you might not feel the same way. And if you don't, that's okay. I needed you to know. YN took a step closer to him, her heart pounding. You idiot, she said softly. Taehyung blinked, confused. What? You should have told me sooner, she said, a small smile breaking across her face. His breath hitched. What are you saying? I'm saying, YN continued, her cheeks flushing, that maybe I've been so focused on us as friends I never stopped to think about what else we could be, but now I think I'd like to find out. A smile spread across Taehyung's face, this time reaching his eyes. Really? Really, she confirmed, her voice steady. Without thinking, Taehyung pulled her into a hug, his arms wrapping around her tightly. YN laughed, the sound warm and light as she hugged him back. As they stood there under the golden leaves, the world around them seemed to fade away. For the first time, everything felt right. And maybe, YN thought, her best friend being jealous wasn't such a bad thing after all.